Hey, what's happening, everybody? So, you know what? I do actually have my coffee, but I don't have my co host. But you know what we got? We got the review of episode 7 of Visions, The Elder, and we're going to talk about it, or at least I'm going to talk about it with all of you right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel, and as you can see, I'm by myself tonight, but I know that I am joined by Ronaldo. So, what's up, Ronaldo? So, a little bit of backstory. Ronaldo basically was talking about how great this episode was. So, we're going to be reviewing, or I'm going to be reviewing. I got to stop saying that. I'm so used to having a co-host. Just a force of habit. But basically, yeah. Star Wars Visions. Now, in case you guys are just watching our show for the first time, basically what we've been doing is Star Wars Visions, which is a brand new show that is essentially it's actually a Japanese anime version of Star Wars that has been getting mixed results. There's some episodes that we liked, and there's other episodes, a lot of episodes actually, that we didn't like. So, this one was, of course, given to us by Ronaldo. He was like, I cannot wait till you guys get to episode 7. And yes, episode 7 is probably my favorite episode. That, for personal opinion. So, Ronaldo, I know you're watching us right now, because you're chatting in. So, yes, I have to say that hands down, it's my favorite episode. And, of course, as luck would have it, I don't have to do this alone. Daryl's with me.
Hey. Jeez.
You know how I hate to do these things on my own, man.
Well, I can't leave you unattended, man. You know, I know how wild you get.
Well, especially when I'm not planning on doing them by myself. That's the worst part. But I was just talking about how...
Well, I'm joining you with the coffee.
You're joining me with the coffee. Well, you got a much better mug than I do, though. But I was just telling everybody... Well, Ronaldo says, hey. Which, of course, I'll put that up later, but I'm not just going to put up a comment. Hey, you know what? A lot of live streamers will do that, and I hate that. Where they'll actually put up, like, every little... No matter what it is. Just because I think they're in love with the fact that you can put comments up. Especially when you get some software that does it. I mean, we happen to use vMix, but we used to use Ecamm. Actually, I think Ecamm was one of the first. Of course, Restream, StreamYard. There's a lot of stuff that I've used or whatever. But, yeah, man, I was talking about how this probably is my favorite episode of this show so far.
Okay. Why is that?
Why? Well,
we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Well, I mean, I know it's because usually I like to have like the whole graphic when we start to get to, but no, that's a fair question actually. Wow, this coffee is not cooled down yet. Ah, yes, it's like drinking a nice hot cup of Mustafar. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, it's because I think that this episode, even though I could argue actually. What episode was that we were raving about a couple? Was it 5?
No.
No, actually it wasn't.
7.
This is 7. Maybe it was 4. It was the one...
it was 5. I think it was 5.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was. Yeah, because we were talking about how, hey, now we can see why. Yeah, maybe it was. So, pretty much the reason why I think that I like this episode the best is because even though you could say that episode 5 had a little bit more action and was maybe more the traditional thing, this is the type of Japanese anime style that I really like. It's a very quiet, very understated, but it had a lot of depth. And it wasn't that long either. I think it was only like maybe 19 minutes. But to me, it just, of all of them, it just had the most emotional weight to it. And of course, it made sense. I mean, one of the biggest things about this show is Just give me the context and let it make sense, and we're halfway there. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of episodes that have done that. 5 did. I think, which one was 5?
That was the one with the what's the jiggy, the lightsaber thing.
Oh,
The
yes.
lightsaber like creator.
Yes. But then the other one that I was thinking of too, which maybe it was episode 3 or maybe 4, it was the one where it was that brother and sister that were trying to stop each other, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool too. And I thought that episode was actually probably one of the first ones I remember we really related to, that we thought was really cool. But with this one, I thought that it was somewhat, it had a lot of emotional weight, with the way that the Jedi Master was talking to his Padawan and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, what could have been the Sith Elder, even though he kind of implied that, maybe he was a Sith and then decided not to be. So overall, I have to say that maybe this is probably my favorite one. Even though, what's funny, I will put this comment up, because this is kind of interesting. Ronaldo says, if I could guess, I think you had the least fun with this one. And I could definitely agree with that, because this was not one of those really high octane, action-packed episodes. This was more cerebral by far. Well, don't keep us in suspense.
Oh.
What are your thoughts?
Okay,
Comes on late, doesn't want to talk. I got it. All right.
No, man, I think it's I like this episode. I like the animation. I thought the byplay between the Padawan and his master was really good. The master reminded me a lot of Qui-Gon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a lot of that kind of Qui-Gon vibe from him.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, they felt a disturbance in the forest. I think there's some things that were missed in this episode. It was really good, but I think one of the main things is that how come the Padawan didn't feel that disturbance in the force if it was so powerful? You know what I'm saying? I think that was one thing that kind of I wanted answers to. The other thing that I really enjoyed is, they kind of got there. They kind of like, all right, we'll figure this out. You take the mountains, I'll take the ship. And of course, my thing is, I thought it was a little bit stupid on the master's part to, like, if you feel in this dark side presence that's really strong like that, and you don't know if it's Sith or not, why would you separate yourself from your Padawan?
Well,
But I
because
get it. At some point they have to
yeah, I mean
learn, but
that's one of them, because the High Republic actually deals a lot with that. Whereas the Republic that we're used to and the Jedi Order that we're used to, they tend to play things a little bit closer to the vest for a while. But with the High Republic, they're encouraged pretty much right away to go out and, pretty much do their thing. But I will say that one of the reasons why, there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't think the Padawan felt the disturbance, because it was sort of implied that the Padawan wasn't quite as in tune with the Force yet, maybe where he should be. I mean, granted, you would think that if it was that powerful of a dark side presence, though, it'd be kind of like, all right, man, even you should be feeling this, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why even master, like, you didn't, like, like, what do you mean you didn't? Like, how did you miss that? And that kind of once again led me to the whole point of, when they finally get there, they separate, because it's kind of like, okay, well, if he doesn't even feel this,
but I don't
you're gonna
think
send
that
him out.
if you remember, though, that dark side presence, he kind of felt sort of on the way. I don't think he actually felt like it was there. It wasn't until a little bit later that, it's like, okay, the ship looks a little Sith-like. There's some context clues on, maybe that dark side presence that I was feeling actually is on this planet. Because if you remember, when he went and talked to the indigenous people that were there, they basically just said, yeah, this elder guy came up and, was visiting us or
Hmm.
whatever, and was kind of mysterious. So at that point, I think that the Jedi Master just basically thought, all right, this is kind of a little mystery that we can solve. It's not a big deal. I don't think he was really connecting the two yet. I don't think he really thought, hey, wait a minute, man, this could be the dark side presence. It wasn't until the Padawan was already up and he found the ship and he's like, yeah, it kind of looks, where it's like,
Hmm.
ooh, because he found that slaughtered whatever it was. And then the
Yeah,
master found the ship. Yeah,
hmm.
began with a V. But I think it was at that point that he was like, oh, and then he started going to his Padawan, hey man, you need to come back down. Ronaldo's got a couple of interesting things to say here. He says, this felt like a Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan dynamic,
Definitely.
which it definitely did. And, I'll get to that in a second. But, I will say that I totally agree with that as well. And the Elder felt like an anti-Yoda, which he actually reminded me of, I'm trying to think of who it is. There's like a different character,
Yeah, he
but I can't remember.
not from Star Wars, but he kind of reminds me of a character in another movie that I've seen. But the thing about the whole, um, like I like the story
All right.
of
Yeah,
of
now
this
now
episode.
we're getting into this a little bit.
Like I like the story of it, and it was cool. But at the same time, um, I wouldn't say this is my favorite episode. I would say this is probably my second favorite, only because I felt like there was still so much more story to be told that I think that could have been told. And but I think the whole purpose of this was to kind of focus really more so on the relationship between the Padawan and the Master. Just that bond and just them chatting it up, like, oh yeah, man, how many planets have you been to? Like, just stuff that guys would talk about on a road trip or something like that.
Well,
So
that's
I think that was cool.
yeah, that's one of the things that I actually thought was really cool was when it opened. And again, that's why I keep using the word understated, because this is a very
Hmm.
sort of quiet, contemplative, maybe low key episode, but it was really rich, starting with that whole conversation that they had on the ship. I thought, okay,
Hmm.
there's
Especially
a story
the
there.
sarcasm line was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
it was
funny.
awesome. I mean, I
It's
really
like
enjoyed the relationship between this master and Padawan. It definitely felt
definitely.
like an Obi-Wan Qui-Gon thing, but in a way it felt a little bit deeper than that because Qui-Gon pretty much he always had felt like he had to teach Obi-Wan something. Whereas there was a lot of points where this master wasn't necessarily teaching, he was just sort of relating and hanging out, and you can tell they had a really good
Hmm.
personal relationship that was beyond the master and apprentice.
Yeah. Um, when the Padawan finally confronts the Elder, and he's like, "Oh, I felt a strong, powerful thing in the Force. Obviously, it's not you. It must be the other one." Which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, that was really funny
Because I was
too.
just like, "Dang, take take a shot at him." So, the sabers that he used were cool.
The
They were like
sabers he
they were
used were
katana style.
yeah. Well, that's one of the
Yeah.
things that I
So I thought,
like overall in this thing, right? Is the fact that they have a lot of katana style lightsabers.
hmm yeah, they had the katana thing, and you could obviously see that the Padawan wasn't even matched. I thought he actually killed him though,
I
which I thought
know.
that was,
I thought so too. And I was
you know,
disappointed. I'm glad that it didn't work out that way because again, it was kind of like you. I mean, I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from where you say, "Well, it was cool and I liked it, but I really wish there was more to it." Because I agree that this is
yeah,
one of the episodes that definitely could have benefited from a longer runtime.
definitely
Ye-
needed a third act.
Yeah. Third act
A
problems.
little Frasier
A
reference.
little
Yep,
Frasier
a little
reference.
Frasier reference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that What's funny about it was slow enough moving. It actually felt like it was a longer episode to me than the 20 minutes that it was. But one of the things that I really loved about it was it it was kind of creepy and chilling in a way. Like you really felt like you were in that situation with them. There's a
Yeah,
mystery,
I'll
there's like an unknown thing and it's like, "Oh, there's this
well,
force and
yeah,
they're
when the elder guy finally shows up and he kinda is, like, in that tattered cloak and everything, I mean, it's kinda like, "Okay, well, what does this guy look like?" Then he takes off the hood, and he's basically, like, just gumming it because everything's kinda, like, rotting away in his mouth, and he's kind of a creepy looking old dude, you
Mhm.
know, but immensely powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, not only that, but it was just once he was revealed, there was even more of a creepiness, but even before, like, you could just feel something was coming. You can feel that they were getting into a really weird situation. Just even the clouds and, kind of the way all that stuff was, where it kind of had that almost pre-storm kind of look. I
Mhm.
just thought that the setup and the atmosphere and that the mood that this episode created perfectly fit the storyline. And it was just I thought that was really well done because it wasn't a bunch of, really bright colors and different action sequences and all this stuff just kind of hitting you like a lot of the other episodes. And a lot of the other episodes, it does that a little bit. And,
Yeah.
it's almost like this cornucopia of just colors and action and stuff like that. But with this, it
You
was
just didn't have a
very, yeah, it
quiet.
was right. It was definitely quiet. I mean, even from the opening sequence when they're just talking on the ship, it
Mhm.
kind of reminded me of those Mandalorian sequences with Grogu, where they
Yeah.
would show, him flying with Grogu for a while. He's like, yeah, we're gonna have to go and check out this planet or whatever. And it's like these little quiet conversations that you almost wish they would have more in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, you always kinda wanna see the relationship building, between especially when you have, like, a Padawan and a master,
Mm-hmm.
you wanna kinda see the dynamic between the 2. You got that with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon a lot in Phantom Menace, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
Um, the back and forth because, he's like, "Well, if you would just listen to him, you'd be on the council by now," and it's like, "Yeah, but," so I kinda like that, and we got a chance to see that with, definitely with Obi-Wan and Anakin, you saw
Yeah.
tons of that,
Well,
but you
they
also saw the friendship stuff too.
and that's it. And that's it. They with Obi-Wan and Anakin, there was definitely a a deep brotherhood type friendship that was there. Whereas the
Mhm.
Obi-Wan Qui-Gon thing was somewhat father and sonish in a way.
Yeah.
The Obi-Wan and Anakin, even though there is a spread, like about a 10-year age difference there was definitely like a brotherly kind of thing in addition to the master and apprentice thing. And I think that one of the interesting things about the Obi-Wan dynamic was that sometimes Obi-Wan had a hard time navigating the friendship versus the responsibility of being his master. It was kind of he would turn it on and off, and I think it sometimes that frustrated Anakin, even from what we saw in the movies.
Yeah, I think, with the whole, um I think Obi-Wan respect he's a traditionalist. So he respects hierarchy. So he looks at, like, okay, this is your master. It's like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, that type of thing.
Hmm.
Kind of like that old school. And then, you got Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship. It's a little bit more like, okay, you're you have a cooler relationship with your parent to the point where they're almost like a sibling, not your mom and dad. But at the same time, I do outrank you. It's kind of like when Obi-Wan did that whole when he checked Anakin, he's like, you will learn your place, young one, and you
Hmm.
learn to follow my lead. That was kind of one of those check moments, like, don't get too comfortable, And I think that was cool. But with these particular characters on in Visions, you know, you could see the the looseness in there, but at the same time, there was still respect, even though it may have been ill placed at times. where he respected him, like, oh, well, you've been on all these planets, everything. And he's just like, nah, I mean, I'm just, just been around, I've done some stuff,
Yeah,
and he's looking for the adventure. And yeah, this is going to be boring, but, I was hoping there was going to be more to it, and so he keeps trying to like reel him in, but not being a stick in the mud about it, if that makes sense.
it does, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was a point I was actually going to make earlier, and it just kind of slipped out of there. But I think that that's another reason maybe why he didn't notice a lot of these things. It's not so much that he isn't powerful enough. It's the fact that he is so into the whole adventure and the action and all that stuff that he's not as in tune. He's not looking for the more subtleties of what's around him. And that's why I think that sometimes, especially in the case of him missing the whole dark side presence and stuff like that, I think he just, because he's definitely more into the action part of being a Jedi, not so much that
The
being in,
politics and
well, it's not even that, but just being in tune with everything around you.
mhm.
It's not, that's one of the reasons why Yoda's like, action adventure, Jedi doesn't crave these things. It's like, it's basically because the more that you're into that stuff and you're looking for the next adventure, you're not really, you don't have your mind on, well, kind of like what, Qui-Gon said,
Qui-Gon and
basically.
Obi-Wan, oh, yep.
you know,
Keep your mind on the present, but not at the expense of the moment.
right.
Yep.
And basically what he
I
was
always love that
saying,
line.
exactly. I mean, it was because that was a really good line. And that's another one of those.
Mhm.
There's certain lines throughout Star Wars. A lot of times they can be even found in the books and the comics and all that. But if we're just sticking to the movies, a lot of it is like these pretty much giving a nice little synopsis of what the Force really is all about.
Mhm.
And that's definitely one of those where it basically tells you in a sentence or two what the Force is about, how you should be reacting to it, and everything else. And I think that that's the problem with this particular Padawan is that he is just so, even more so than some of the other Jedi we've seen, just so obsessed with, yeah, man, I mean, I'm hoping that there's something going on this planet because I really want,
Yeah, because even when they were on the planet, he was like, okay, so if I do see him and he is a Sith, it's lightsabers out then, right? Like he's ready. Like he's just gung ho, man. And then he gets up there and then he's like, look, dude, you're not ready for this. And he quickly finds out that's like, yeah, learn to chill out. And um when the master got there though, I loved how that was they almost kind of pulled the whole Found a Menace on us a little bit. Yeah, Found a Menace a little bit because, like the Padawan was kind of down. I thought he was dead, honestly, but
oh,
he
I
kind of distracted the
completely thought,
elder, and then that was enough time for the master to go in with the fatal blow.
which was such a
And
cool thing.
yeah,
Where he
it
just kind of
was.
like ignited. It was kind of like a little bit of a Kylo thing in a way.
Yep. And I'm just kind of thinking like, man, wow, like that was a total like Phantom Menace, um, Obi-Wan Maul kind of thing where, he's like, okay, he's slightly distracted, and then there you go. But I love how the master was still humble. Like, yeah, if this guy was in his prime though, I don't know if we would have been out so lucky, man. This guy is, pretty powerful as, at this age. And then of course he goes back into the whole teaching thing with him,
Hmm.
like, okay, as you get older, you're gonna become more powerful. I'm gonna become weaker. I mean, it's just the net fact of life, you know.
Well, and that was one of the other things that I really enjoyed about this episode was the fact that it gave us even more insight because I like the fact that in a way it characterized certain elements that we know about Star Wars, but then in some ways it flipped it right on its head because the way that we've been, I guess, looking at the Force is the fact that as the Jedi gets older and gets more experience, they get more powerful. They just start to rely less on lightsabers, a little bit more on just standard Force powers. And you saw a little bit of a reflection of the Yoda Dooku thing because, the
Hmm.
Master, well, the Elder actually, it's like when he lost one of his lightsabers and it was destroyed, and he's like, down to one, huh? Yep, okay, get out the Force lightning. So now it's time to, start to,
Got
maybe
the
rely.
fricassee.
Yeah, it's like rely a little bit less on the lightsaber techniques and all that stuff, and a little bit more on the power.
Hmm.
But one of the things that the Jedi Master pointed out, though, was like, look, actually, when we get older, it's true they probably get more and more powerful, but then the pendulum starts to swing the other way. Now, I could just, maybe that's when, like in Yoda's case, it's like, you know what? I'm kind of starting to diminish in power. Maybe it's just time to disappear and be one with the Force. And I can't help but maybe think that that's when the Jedi starts to realize that, they're going up and they're getting more and more powerful, and then they cross that point, and then they start to,
That
go
decline
down. Yeah, they start to
is quick.
decline. It's kind of like, well, you know what? Maybe, but see,
Time
a
to hang up.
Sith, right? Time to hang it up and fade out, as it were. But a Sith isn't going to feel that way because they want to continue to amass power, and they can't let it go. All right,
Yeah, and it
so let me get to some of these. Ronaldo's been chatting up a storm, and we've just been
don't.
So yeah, let's start with this one. He says some people said the fight with the Padawan was too short, but I thought it made sense. There's no way that kid could beat the Elder. And
Yeah, I mean that's almost like a kid fighting Yoda or something like that. Like really?
Yeah, and actually I agree. I don't think that fight should have been too long. I mean, if you think about it, you could even go back and just look at the prequels. Both in episodes 2 and 3, even Obi-Wan was pretty much put out of commission pretty quick, and he's really experienced.
Yeah, Dooku dispatched him like almost like nothing.
Immediately, too.
And now it's
like,
his master's master. So when you really think of the timeline, it's like my master's master just dispatched me like I was basically nothing. But then like the next movie, like I'm on the council. You see what I'm saying? It's still like,
yeah, I mean,
he still got his butt handed to him at the beginning of the movie again.
Exactly. By the same guy.
Yep.
And so I think that, and there's been a lot of arguments about, well, how come Anakin and part of it is because Anakin was starting to employ a little bit of dark sideness to his whole thing. But I think the biggest thing was that, and I remember the novelization of Revenge of the Sith covered this a little bit, where it was because of his mixed fighting style and everything, it was like Dooku wasn't really prepared for it. Whereas with Obi-Wan, he was Qui-Gon's master, so it's kind of like, no, yeah, okay, this. And
not to mention that, oh, go ahead.
No, I was pretty much done.
I was just gonna say, not to mention, I mean, this is the child of the Force at that.
Well, that
so
too,
his whole, and the more he became in tune with that and being able to stretch himself out with control now, that just makes him that much more deadly. It's just kind of like, it's kind of one of those Bruce Lee Ip Man type situations where, like, yeah, once Bruce got to a point where he really kind of understood technique and the ideology of stuff, and he kind of had a good grasp of it. Yeah, there's pretty much nobody that could really take him out, man. And it's kind of the same thing with Anakin, where he got good enough to the point where his only problem was that he was just arrogant. That was the only problem that he had.
Right, and it definitely slowed his progress. Now, this is interesting, too, because Ronaldo says, I want to learn about the Elder. He's very interesting. And I came away with the same thing.
I agree, Ronaldo.
I was definitely a lot more keen to learn about this guy and his origins and what he does and all this stuff, because he was a really interesting character, and just the way that he carried himself, he was a little bit creepier than a lot of other Sith.
He reminded me, well, not remind me, but I think he could be like an acolyte or something like that. Like he kind of reminded me of that little henchman that Vader had on Mustafar.
Kind of, but I think that it's implied that he either was a Sith or something, and it's almost like I'm beyond that.
Well, he's definitely studied Sith stuff. It's just
well, and he probably was one.
Okay, maybe he was one at one point, or maybe he just got to a certain point and maybe he wasn't good enough almost kind of like what they did with Savage Opress. What it's like, okay,
Oh
look,
yeah.
you're not good enough, so we just got to destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
But he got away, and now he still has that knowledge, though.
And he developed it, obviously. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Ronaldo says my favorite lightsaber fights are the slow and calculated ones, like the fights in this episode. And then he even throws a little nice word at that I haven't seen in a while. I think that fighting style has more verisimilitude. Man, I always have a hard time pronouncing that word. Verisimilitude.
Similitude.
Yeah. Which is a word that I haven't actually heard in a while. But I agree, though, because I definitely think that one of the magical parts of the original trilogy is the fact that, and we did a show on this, actually, where there's more depth in the fights. There's more emotion. It's not really about the lightsaber battle itself. It's really more about what's behind it. And I think in a way, even though it's not quite the same, there's still a little bit more. I don't know. I just think there's a little bit more depth and weight rather than a bunch of guys just jumping around and doing acrobatic moves with a lightsaber.
Okay, I'm gonna bring a question to the both of you, you and Ronaldo. So
Uh-oh.
based on that, so I'm a little bringing up a do a little.
Remember, Ronaldo won't know it for probably like 20 to 40 seconds, but
I got you. But okay, so based upon what you just said, like the lightsaber duels have any more emotional weight and everything, and I agree with that. Like I think that definitely does play a part in the verses, because like the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon versus Maul battle, though it was cool, it didn't have as much weight as, let's say, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, right? So with that being said, which battle do you think had both or had more emotional weight? The Luke and Vader round 2 or Anakin and Obi-Wan?
I'm going to have to go with Anakin and Obi-Wan. First of all, because it did have both. I mean, it was some of the most spectacular lightsaber dueling, probably the best lightsaber duel as far as action. But also, because even though Luke was really desperate to bring his father back to the light. That's what really made that, and he was willing to sacrifice himself to do it. So you could actually make the argument, and I wouldn't necessarily argue against it if somebody said that. On the other hand, there was that brotherhood, that friendship, and now they're on opposite sides. And now, Anakin is basically a Sith named Darth Vader. And Obi-Wan realizes, as much as he doesn't, because he even told Yoda, like, look, let me go up against the Emperor because I can't kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when they had that little exchange, it was heartbreaking because Anakin didn't want to destroy him. He's like, look, join me and, let's do this together like we always do. Mm-hmm. Or at least don't stand in my way. And that's another thing that was big because at this point, Anakin's out there killing younglings. He obviously has it's like all bets are off.
Regard. Yeah.
But at the same time, he was still like, look, if you just don't stand in my way, I won't kill you. That's huge. Mm-hmm. A lot of people overlook that part.
No, you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, we gave just enough time, I think, for Ronaldo to weigh in on it. He says, I think the Luke and Vader fight, it was slow, realistic, and calculated, and it had a lot of emotion. And again, I'm still going with Obi-Wan and Anakin, but I wouldn't necessarily argue against it because now you have a father or a son trying to turn his father back to the good.
Win his father back.
And win his father back. And he's even willing to sacrifice himself to do that. So, there's some weight there. So then Ronaldo says, what made me fall in love with this is the overall lesson. You can have a lot of power, but eventually age will catch you and your body won't be the same. Yeah. Not sure how I really feel about that one. As I advance in age, it's kind of like I'm a little bit closer to the elder than the Padawan these days. It's This is hitting a little close to home, but yeah, I actually think that this is something that is brought up that you really don't see a lot. At least you don't see it addressed a lot in Star Wars. But yet, it's something that definitely envelops the entire saga. Because you could see the attitudes of aging, too. You could see how Yoda's doing it versus, say, how Palpatine's doing it. You know, Palpatine doesn't even really have a body. He's willing to occupy this weakened corpse because he has to keep trying to just amass power. And the thing that's scary about him, he's not doing it for any reason, like how Anakin was duped into it. It's true the power corrupts you, but at least he had a somewhat noble reason for it at first. Palpatine just wants power for the sake of power. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. You know, and of course, Ronaldo says he loved when Star Wars gives this kind of lesson. This is in reference to something we had said earlier. It actually reminded me of what Yoda said in Episode 6. This is when we were talking about the whole, you know, Force stuff. Strong am I in the Force, but not that strong. And yeah, because a lot of times, and I think that you're seeing this in universe, is that, you know, when Anakin's like, well, nobody can kill a Jedi, and, you know, Qui-Gon's like, I kind of wish that were true. And Yoda's reinforcing this idea that people think because the Jedi have these powers that the Jedi are just invincible and that they couldn't die and that they could overcome death and all this other stuff. And that's actually what led Anakin astray. Say, hey, those guys can't do it, but Sith, yeah, we can do that. Well, they can't. I mean, not in any real meaningful way, anyway. And then he says it was similar to the Obi-Wan versus Maul and Rebels. Yeah, that's a good point. I almost forgot about that one. That's another, I mean, it was quick.
Yeah.
It was very quick, but it did have a lot of emotional weight. He says, it seems like the Elder thought the Sith were a failure. And that's it. I definitely get that idea, too. I get that vibe that he almost had a little bit of disdain for the Sith. You know, that he felt like, oh, you know, don't limit me to that, basically. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is a good one, too. He says, I mean, I love the fights in the prequels, but I think the original trilogy fights and sequels fights, to some extent, were more realistic. Yeah, with the sequels, they were kind of realistic in the fact that nobody seemed to really know how to use a lightsaber. Other than maybe Kylo. But it wasn't like he really was super elegant with it.
Yeah, I just think that the whole the sequel trilogy lightsaber duels were garbage to me.
They weren't real.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, I said the coolest one they had was Rey and Kylo in that little, you know, in the palace of Snoke. You know, that was cool.
I kind of like the one in Rise of Skywalker that they did too.
On the
Death Star? Yeah, on the Death Star. They had some cool moments.
Yeah, I think that could have been better, and I think at least I was let down. I would say that on that one.
Well,
To
I
me,
agree.
I think
You're probably right.
See,
The
to
Last
me,
Jedi one
the
was probably the best.
out of the sequels now,
Yeah.
the original trilogy, I would say those were the most realistic because it made sense. Like, okay, Obi-Wan is old, Vader's, so you know, Obi-Wan's really not trying to duel him. He's just trying to keep him at bay. He's just trying to keep Vader occupied while everybody gets away. Empire, Vader was taunting Luke. He just wanted to see where Luke was as far as his skill set. Like, okay, I'm testing you. Like, all right, you can handle yourself all right decently with a lightsaber. How much has Obi-Wan taught you, basically? You know. And then, of course, let's see what your knowledge of the Force is. And obviously, not that good. So, okay, the edge is up on you on there. So, and then, of course, Return of the Jedi to me was like the best because now you kind of see both at their, I don't want to say prime, but like, at their peak, where they're both good. They're both really good. Vader's just slower just because he's in the suit, he's older, and he's not ready for Luke in his youth and his skill set that finally caught up with him. But to me, the prequels will still be the best. Just simply not just because they were more flashy, but um it was true swordsmanship to me. Like it was really more like, and you got a chance to really see the different styles. Like with Dooku, you got a chance to see Yoda's whole, like how they had to adjust to different styles and techniques, and that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about it is that they had something for everybody almost. Like Ronaldo makes a good point too. He says the sequel fights use more brute force. They aren't as fast as the prequels or as slow as the original trilogy, but more in the middle. And yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just that the sequels.
Just swinging aimlessly, though.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, though, one of the things that I do think that each of the trilogies got right is that the lightsabers match somewhat realistically for that time or for the purpose.
Yeah, I would say the sequel trilogy lightsaber duels it fit the characters, because if you really think about it, neither one of them, Rey nor Kylo, were fully trained.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks that way, and that's the idea, and I get that. I just wish that at least by Rise of Skywalker, more advancement had been made.
Well, and I think that the problem too is that our expectations, right? Because we all thought that
Right.
episodes 7 through 9 were going to be more about Luke, Han, and Leia. And maybe in the process, they would be handing the torch off to a new generation of characters, but that it would still primarily focus on them. And some could argue that it did in a way, but it was really almost like they were taking a back seat to the sequel trilogy characters, to the younger ones,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the problem, the whole, Luke ignite the green kind of thing. People thought that they were going to see the next evolution of what Luke Skywalker did. In other words, the season finale of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we thought episode 7 through 9 was going to give us. Let's see some, maybe one more big adventure story arc for the big three one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the younger characters are introduced as these guys are going on their one last big adventure together. And then when that's done, episode 9 is done, okay, now you could pick it up with the new characters. That's what everybody expected. So I think that that's the big problem with that. But I think that where each saga basically got it correct was, obviously we're seeing the Jedi more in their prime in the prequels, and so the lightsaber duels have to reflect that. Obviously, the lightsaber duels really are taking more of a backseat in the original trilogy to the circumstance, the moment.
I mean, there aren't any Jedi anyway, at that point.
Exactly. And I mean, if you really think about it, besides buying them time, what Obi-Wan was doing, this is the first time in a while that he's seen Anakin again. And obviously a lot of that's going to be filled in with the Obi-Wan series. So you have when Anakin was first essentially beaten and then left for dead in episode 3. And whatever's going to happen when they meet up again in the Obi-Wan series. And then you have this thing in episode 4. And I think that is pretty much what, I don't know. I just think that that's the overall tone. You have a lot of this family squabbling. And that's pretty much what leads to all of the lightsaber duels. So the duels really, it's not like they're trying to all out duel each other. It's more, they're fighting.
It's more like just battles of passion. I think that's what
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
about.
exactly.
If you really think about it, it's like battles of passion, as opposed to like, okay, all right, my side versus your side. It's not like
Right,
Braveheart or anything like that. It's
right. It's
it's just more
domestic
like, okay,
domestic
violence, basically.
disturbance, I mean, right. It's a family, it's kind of a family squabble with lightsabers. I mean, that's really what it
Eventual
is.
negotiations. That's what they
There you
call
go,
them.
exactly. And then in the sequel trilogy, you have people that haven't even seen Jedi. You got Finn picking
Right.
up a light. I'll never forget that. I'm like, dude, you're having the former stormtrooper fight. Really? This is your big duel of episode 7?
Oh my goodness. And he's just wildly just swinging this stupid thing at
Yeah,
him.
man. It's like, really?
I mean,
This
good thing
is.
Chewbacca hit him with that crossbow.
I waited 30
that bowcaster,
years to see a former stormtrooper fighting. I mean, this is what I waited for. Exactly. The crossbow stuff. Like the coolest moments, honestly, which is, of course, by the way, Dwight's joining us.
Happy birthday, sir.
Oh, it's his birthday today. All right. Well, he says the original trilogy fights were more realistic, and then he's kind of laughing along with us with the aggressive negotiations line. But yeah, that's the problem. The coolest moments in that movie, honestly, came from Han Solo, which is cool because he was my favorite character anyway. But I mean, of course,
love that.
him talking about how the Force, all this stuff. Yeah, it's all true, which is a complete opposite from where he used to stand. And then how he fell in love with Chewie's crossbow. Like he had never used it in all the decades they were together. And he's like, wow, this thing's actually pretty cool.
I love that line, man.
And now he's like using it all the time. I mean, it was great. I mean, those to me felt more like the original trilogy moments. I mean, granted, yeah, there were other scenes in there too that definitely had that vibe. But it's like, okay, so now I'm seeing the former stormtrooper fighting Kylo, and then Rey picks it up, and I'm like, okay, the new girl. It was one of those things where a lot of times I think people incorrectly were attributing it, like, oh, you don't like a female lead, that kind of thing. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. I would have been equally critical if Rey had been a male character. Because it's like, that would have been like Luke going up against Vader in episode 4 to me.
Yep.
Like you just learned this thing yesterday.
Well, yeah, and I don't even think she learned how to even do that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like,
no, that's the thing.
Stuck her
she
hand
didn't even
out
have any training. Right. Then she's like all like doing the Force mind trick thing, and it's like, okay, granted, yes, they gave it a little bit of context with the whole Palpatine connection, but still, how did you learn to do it?
Yeah, I didn't even know that even existed.
Right.
First of all,
exactly. The Jedi at this point were, put in myth status again. Like, oh, I didn't even know these guys were. I mean, Luke Skywalker, oh, he was real. It's like, okay,
yeah,
two movies later, you're going to throw the term Sith around like it's just common everyday thing, but you don't even know Luke Skywalker is real. The hero of the rebellion. I mean, these are the things.
I know. Soapbox.
Yes. Yes. Now, Ronaldo had asked this question. Hang on, we got to address this because it kind of brings us a little bit back to the topic at hand here.
Visions.
Yes, we are actually reviewing Visions episode 7, not Star Wars episode 7. It says, do you think this episode might be canon? Can you put it somewhere in the continuity? You could.
Possibly. I mean, because there were some, and here's a key moment when they brought this up, and I was meant to get your opinion on it. So here it is. Remember, because he said, is it a Sith Lord? He's like, well, no, they've been, gone for 100 years. So it's like, well, where did this put this story then? This sounds like prequel era.
Well, I mean, yeah, because they were talking, it was almost like the same line with Mace.
So it's kind of like, all right, well, no, millennia would be 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this seems before prequel times.
Well, the Sith had actually been extinct. Yeah, the Sith actually went extinct right after the Old Republic. I mean, even in the High Republic, that's why you don't see any Sith. Because they're still extinct.
They've been gone for 100 years. So
did he say 100?
He said Yeah, he said 100 in this one. He's like, yeah, the Sith have been around for 100 years, so that puts this before the High Republic.
Yeah. Well, then this would put us a little after the Old Republic, which it could be. The technology fits. And of course, the lightsaber styles, maybe, you can attribute to that too. Because he had more of a traditional type of lightsaber. And that's the other thing too. The answer to the question is, it depends on how much you want to do. Do you just want to put the story as canon along with the characters, or are you trying to put like every little thing, like the katana type lightsabers and things like that? That's where you might run into trouble, because this is specifically done to be an anime version of Star Wars, not a Star Wars version of anime. It's different. It's basically like they're taking the content and all that stuff of Star Wars and they're throwing it, and they're putting it into the world of anime, following its rules and stuff. Because that's another thing I wanted to touch on too. I thought the animation of this was really cool. Again, it's kind of that older style anime that I really like. I like the newer stuff too, but I really appreciate this stuff.
Definitely.
So Ronaldo says, maybe it's some number of years before the prequels and after the High Republic. But what Daryl said is basically true. If he did say 100 years, I think you're right. I think he did. Because I think that stuck with me too. Then, yeah, it would put it not too long after the Old Republic. And that's one of the things that I think is really interesting about this stuff, is because you really don't get that much of a sense of time periods in a lot of these episodes. They could fit almost anywhere. Ronaldo says, and do you want this to be canon? Of course, he says yes. I wouldn't mind. Like I said, I really enjoyed the character of the Elder. I liked the Jedi Master. I thought he was a really cool character. He was kind of like that cool uncle type of, like Qui-Gon's cooler younger brother, who maybe lets you get away with a little bit more. I mean, he's kind of like
on the weekend to take a girl out.
Kind of the California Jedi. He just kind of had a real easygoing nature to himself, I think, that really, I thought was a little bit different. I mean, he was similar to some of the, we can rattle off like Qui-Gon and people like that, but he was sort of his own
Quinlan
character.
Vos.
Quinlan Vos, yep. That's another one. He kind of had that vibe going too. He kind of reminds me of a combination of Quinlan Vos and Talon Card. The latter, of course, being an old expanded universe character, but yeah, I thought it was really cool. So, I mean, I vote for canon. What do you say?
I mean, it's cool. Like, if they want to put it in canon, I'm all right with it. I mean, I don't necessarily have to have it in canon, but if they decide, I wouldn't be mad either,
Yeah.
I'm kind of indifferent.
Well, that's kind of the theme of the whole series, I think. Hey, think about it. Ronaldo says that Jedi was a chill dude. Think about it. You only have 2 more episodes we got to review. We're coming up on the end.
Yes.
So, which is going to be interesting because while, of course, Ronaldo was talking about 5 and 7, and I mean, at various times with the chats and all that stuff, we were talking about some of these other episodes. We really nobody's really referenced 8 and 9 too much. And I never really looked ahead much at what 8 and 9 is. So I'm really looking forward to reviewing the next episode. As will you, because we'll be one step closer to the end. And then we might have, I don't know, like a couple of weeks or whatever, and then it's the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes, sir.
And I know there was a trailer, another TV trailer that was released that has like a ton more footage in it. So I'll have to check that out. So, I mean, there's a lot of Star Wars on the horizon. But the question is, before we wrap up, final thoughts. What do you think of this episode? How would you sum it all up?
I'll give it a B. B plus. Really good.
Okay.
I think it had, like I said, great animation. I loved the byplay between the Padawan and the Master. Um, the elder dude was creepy, but there were some things I wish that they would have, expanded a little bit more on. I think they had the time to do so, and I think everything was very, like Ronaldo said earlier. It had a meaningful. It was meaningful, and they taught that really great lesson. So, B plus for me.
I'll probably go. I probably have to go A minus, just
Okay.
because I really like the whole vibe of the episode. I like the atmosphere of it. I like the fact that it was a little bit more understated, a little bit more low key. It was definitely more character driven, I think, than a lot of the other episodes were. Um, I just think that leading up to finding the Elder and when the Elder was revealed, I mean, everything was just done in the perfect way that it's almost like with everything that you were looking at, all the scenery and stuff, just the overall storyline and the way that it was set up, it actually made you feel the way you were supposed to feel. And I think that you were definitely on this journey with them. I didn't feel like I was watching them. I felt like I was with them on this. And it was
Mm,
cool. And this is one that I would enjoy watching, I think, a couple of times.
definitely.
I mean, this is an episode I could see myself just going back and putting on. I can't say
Hmm.
that about a lot of the other ones.
God no.
I'm sure you could say the same thing. Dwight gave it an A. And then
Okay.
Ronaldo, he says, I think you will at least have fun with the next episode. But there's one thing you might hate a lot, like I did. Well, then.
Well, all right.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. That should be really interesting then. See, I always like this foreshadowing of the next episode. I always think that that's fun. It's like, how bad are we going to hate this? Or gasp, will we actually like it? And then, of course, Ronaldo doing the numbers. I give it a 9.5 out of 10. I'm going to say it's a solid A.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that overall, we're on the right track, and I'm looking forward to the next episode. But the question is, not what we think, not even what everybody that chat in live thinks. Well, yeah.
Well,
But what do you guys think? What do you guys think that are watching the rebroadcast of this live stream? Did you like episode 7? Do you even like Visions? Give us... Let us know what you think basically about Visions and specifically about this episode in the comment section. We would really like to know. And then if you guys have any other Star Wars stuff you want us to review or whatever, we're basically open to that. Although I will tell you, when the Book of Boba Fett comes out, that's pretty much what I think we're going to be doing.
oh yeah.
Which is going to lead into a busy 2022 for us, because I have a feeling if these things start to overlap, it's going to be really difficult. It's
Yeah.
almost like, man, what do we do? Because what if they're actually on at the same time? Uh-oh.
Well,
Oh, I don't know if I like this at all.
oh boy.
He says also, for episode 8, I hope you like bunnies.
Bunnies?
We talking like Playboy bunnies or?
No, yeah.
I mean, it is anime.
That's a high and tie.
Yes. Yes.
See, then they do. Never mind. Let's move
Exactly. The Star Wars version of that would be. Ooh.
on. Yeah. See.
Well, I'm just going to let that one go and just say
Yep.
that check us out this Friday
Exactly.
at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, where, of course, we'll be back with you. I actually don't know. Do we have any idea what we're going to talk about on Friday, or is it still...
There's still a bunch of stuff floating around out there. I mean, we got stuff to talk about. Just a matter of just settling on one of them, but
All
we'll
right.
definitely have something.
Well, we got stuff to talk about. We're going to settle on one, and you'll have to watch us Friday night at 8 o'clock to find out what it is. But just remember, you can chat live with us, or you can just watch. But whichever you're doing, Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Of course, it helps out the channel. And we want to bring more Star Wars content to you. So with that said, it's that time. We got to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see you guys on Friday. I'm Eric Vansel.
Happy birthday.
Yes, and happy birthday, Dwight.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
Oh, man, you almost threw me off. May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.